with light. I said, wait a minute. I could take a substrate and blast it with a semiconductor and blast a hole in it. And I have pictures of it.
Well, no, up there's the laser you made later, and that's, you blasted a hole with the laser you guys built.
That's right.
But that was after Maiman and the ruby rod. But I mean, it shows that it was a convergent idea.
Oh, sure.
That it was a discussed idea that, we knew that there were color centers in these crystals. And so even if you didn't, think of a laser, there was still the idea of trying to do this type of similar ideas. It hadn't converged, yet, but the idea was floating around. But the idea of using the germanium and the recombination and everything else was really sort of evolved from Murray Lampert's original idea, but then you had the idea of this impure compounds.
Oh, and then I had cavities, And what I did?
What?
I finally built a ruby laser.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do it, I also needed to cool it at liquid helium temperature. Mm-hmm. And then someone had to take my laboratory over.
Right, but this is like probably 1961 or 2, right?
I said, you know what? You're occupying the whole room there.
Yeah.
But the trouble is, I was telling people that this ruby laser, I could blast holes everywhere.
Right. And that's the photo up there of blasting the hole. Right. I want to ask you something else too about farther back, because before you did experimental work, you did work in nonlinear optics, right? Right? You did some theoretical work in nonlinear optics.
Of course.
So what was, and when there's a thing there, is it was only you and a couple of other Russian people might have actually first done some of the original work in nonlinear optics. So that was when you were a postdoc?
Postdoc.
And that was at Columbia?
Columbia, sure.
But you wrote a paper on nonlinear optics, right?
Yeah.
And what was the idea there?
Well, I also thought of another thing. I said, instead of having the band gap,
mm-hmm.
I could take a lower energy
mm-hmm.
beam, but I could shoot it into the semiconductor.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but wait a minute. He said, if you're going to shoot a beam whose energy is less than the band gap of
mm-hmm.
the semiconductor,
mm-hmm.
I said, but you know what?
What?
If you have it intense enough, I have multiple photon absorption.
Okay.
So therefore, I was able to show
mm-hmm.
I can blast a hole, lower the band gap.
Oh, because a matter of intensity in terms of the band gap. Because the key thing was the intensity, not the wavelength.
That's right.
Because that's what induced the nonlinear effects.
And you have multiple photon absorption.
Right, and it's also because you have a distribution, and on the tail of the distribution, you can have, interactions from that, right?
Yeah, but these old ideas that I did,
mm-hmm.
I finally went to RCA
mm-hmm.
and decided to sort of use some of the ideas now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Then it turns out
mm-hmm.
that I got tired after a while,
mm-hmm.
and I decided to sort of leave RCA.
Right. Well, you wanted to have more control over the situation than just a lab director, and you did interview at Science Center up in Lockheed. You almost could have ended up in Palo Alto.
That's right.
And then you interviewed, and what was it? The connection made to UCLA, was that through Frank Herman or whatever? Because Dave Saxon, right? Someone contacted Dave Saxon.
Oh yeah, but it was there.
Who was that?
Well, Dave Saxon.
Yeah.
It turns out that, believe it or not,
mm-hmm.
Dave Saxon
mm-hmm.
was interested for me in getting to UCLA
mm-hmm.
because when I was in Syracuse,
mm-hmm.
there's another professor that during the war
mm-hmm.
was at the laboratory and met
mm-hmm.
Dave Saxon
mm-hmm.
and had all these other ideas of multi-photon
Mm-hmm.
And therefore I said, you know what? I'm sort of tired of being here. I would like to have a job at UCLA.
Right.
But I said, well, what am I going to do? So I called up and said, well, who could recommend you?
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, there's someone that knew Dave Saxon during the war.
Mm.
There was a laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
And he recommended you.
Wasn't it Ben Lax or Mel Lax? No.
No, Mel Lax knew Dave Saxon.
Okay.
That was an important thing.
Right.
And therefore, he recommended me
Okay.
to come to RCA. And the trouble is, with all the recommendation I have,
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't do anything more with it. I just accepted it.
And? Oh, you didn't use it as leverage, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you could have used it as leverage at RCA?
Yeah. Leverage it even at
UCLA.
UCLA.
Right. Is it like a chair or something? Not a chair, but a...
I could have been a big smear.
Right.
But I just went along that way. But you know what? Every time I used to see Dave Saxon.
But you know, you at UCLA, you worked on cyclotron resonance, you worked on CO2 lasers, you worked on deep level transient spectroscopy, and I think another important thing you worked on was the strained germanium, the strained lattice.
That's right. You can
and you worked on that with Robert Martin.
That's right.
And the people at Hughes, right?
That's right. And what happened then, finally, my brother, Morris Robinson.
Rubin Braunstein, right?
Was at a laboratory
Mm-hmm.
in Malibu.
Right.
So it turns out that I interacted. I said, but wait a minute. When I went there, my brother was
Mm-hmm.
a big schmear there.
Right. He was working on molecular beam epitaxy.
That's right.
He had one of the first Chauvet-Blanc epitaxy machines in the West Coast.
So what happened is
Mm-hmm.
that I was offered a job there, but the trouble is, someone said, wait a minute, if you're going to bring Rubin here, there's some other more prominent people.
Oh.
What's he going to do?
Yeah.
And my brother said, he has a lot of ideas.
Right, but they brought you there for consulting. It wasn't a full-time job.
Yeah.
Right.
But then it was Jerry Pikus
Uh-huh.
who worked there. In fact, I knew him. I also worked at one time at the Naval Research Laboratory
Mm-hmm.
in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave Pikus was here.
Mm-hmm.
So my brothers said, they're trying to get me an offer there.
Mm-hmm.
And someone said, well, what are you going to do with Jerry Pikus if they bought Rubin? He's a leader there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out I finally had the job. And I did all these work with my brother. But there's a very sad thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I used to sort of be at UCLA.
Right.
I take an afternoon.
Right.
Day, you go up to
Hughes. Right.
Malibu to the laboratory there.
Right. That sort of took over from the RCA consulting.
Yeah.
Because the important of RCA, you still went back to RCA, and I remember in the early 70s you worked on the selective vision decision, right? You were consulting with them on the capacitive sensor and stuff.
Yeah.
At RCA, because you would come back and tell me that they're trying to say should they do it with a laser or do it with the stylus, you know? So.
But you know, the trouble is,
Mm-hmm.
my brother
Mm-hmm.
was very competent there.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of contracts there.
Right.
But one day, they didn't have any more contracts.
Yeah.
They said, well, they had to fire him.
Oh.
And they fired him. And
So he didn't retire from Hughes, you're saying?
No, they fired him.
Oh, geez, I didn't realize.
But then again, every time, now that I live at Pacific Palisades, I go up to the
Malibu. The research lab is still there.
Well, I looked up at the hill.
Yep, and there it is.
But my wife and I now, we want to have anything special. See, they didn't have a cafeteria.
Right.
In the laboratory.
You had to drive down to John's Garden.
John's Garden.
Right.
And I see it's John's Garden. And that's what it was. Well, as time went on, in fact, lately, whenever my wife and I want to have a change to go, they drive to Malibu.
Right.
Go to John's Garden. This special. Last time we went, John was not there anymore.
Oh.
I said, well, where did he move? Well, he made enough money, and he moved to Palos Verdes. And where I live now, I can look out there, and I see the green thing, and I see the John's Garden. But I still have a wonderful feeling of the sun there. So you see, it's sort of on and on. The only thing is, the saddest thing, when I think about it,
what?
When I used to go to the Hughes Research Laboratory,
yeah,
one day, it was a part-time job for me.
Right.
So one day I came there, and my brother said, I have a very sad thing to tell you.
Yeah.
That, where I'm living, Shirley's brother, mother was there too, and she told me to get out.
Yeah.
Well, what I do, I had to get out.
Oh.
And it turns out, because of that,
yeah,
my brother was living
right, I know.
by himself.
Yeah.
But what he did do, he moved to Palos Verdes. And the reason why he always wanted to live there, he always wanted a sailboat.
Yeah.
And he had a sailboat, and he sailed. He'd call me up every once in a while.
Right.
And said, well, why don't you come sail there? I said, I can't, I have lessons to do.
Yeah.
So it turns out that he was so lonesome that he passed away.
Right, he went into a depression, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it turns out, I went there, and Palos Verdes, his apartment, his friends of his, were getting rid of all his possessions.
Right.
And I said, you know what? If I'd only done the right thing, if I'd gone with boating, he wouldn't have had the accident that he passed away.
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
But the trouble is, it goes on and on and on.
Right.
We finally live in
Marina.
No, when I finally lived in where am I living now?
No, you're in the Palisades. But I'm saying he was living in the Marina, and then he lived in the Westwood, and then I guess but you're talking about now.
Yeah. Well, what happened is, the Pacific Palisades is still all the way to, what's that town again? The bus, you can go on that bus. But we used to go shopping